love to love her.
Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, and if you are new, then welcome. I'm so glad you decided to click on this video. Today, right before I begin the video, I'd just like to say that today I finally hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is just crazy. I'm so thankful for all of you guys who have subscribed, continued to watch, support me, like my videos, leave comments. It is just so awesome. I'm just having so much fun, and we can only go up from here. So thank you guys so much for supporting me and having an interest in my life and what I have to talk about. So anyways, today's video, I'm going to be talking about the qualities that I personally think make a rodeo horse. So what I mean by this, because it is just a barrel horse, like the barrel horses you would take to a jackpot. However, the difference between jackpotting and barrel racing is a quite big one. Jackpotting and rodeoing, sorry. It's quite a big difference. And I think a lot of people don't really realize that, because if you aren't rodeoing, you don't know exactly what all goes on, what your horse has to put up with. It really you can't even imagine how different it is. So again, these are just my opinions. If you have others, if you think that if you don't agree, that's totally fine. In fact, if you have any qualities you think make a rodeo horse, what a rodeo horse is, that I haven't mentioned, then definitely leave that down below. I'd love to hear them. So, just saying, I have written down some of my notes, just so that I don't scan over or miss some of the points that I'm trying to make. So, and these are not in any particular order, but they're all super important, and I think if your horse has all of these, then they can be a rodeo horse for sure. Although I will say it takes time, okay? So, the top two things I think are so important, probably most important in the whole list. However, I think you don't really think about these things as much when you're thinking about doing something like this. So, my top thing that I put is your horse has to love barrel racing. To be a rodeo horse, it has to be their life. Even just barrel racing as a whole, your horse is going to do its best if it loves the sport. So having a horse that loves barrel racing is very important in making a good rodeo horse. The second thing that I put on my list is a strong relationship with their owner. If there is not complete trust there, how can you ask your horse to do something like this? You and your horse should have a bond, because if you're out on the road together, going to these different places, having a trust there and a familiarity when your horse can look to you if they're unsure or if they're not settling in a new environment, having you there with them should make them a little bit more comfortable. And even just to succeed in barrel racing, you have to know your horse so well, and you have to really have a friendship there that can only be created through time and work together. So that is a super important thing. Obviously, my third thing is a pretty obvious one. So that's a solid pattern on barrels. So the way that this differs from barrel racing is the fact that if you're jackpotting just in your local town, you may go to a few different arenas, but you're probably not going to a lot of huge races out of town, and if you are, it's probably not that often. So if you're just local jackpotting, your horse is going to get very used to the few arenas that it's going to. You may even only go to one arena, and that's totally fine. For so many people, that's the best barrel racing there is. And for so many horses as well, that's what makes it great, is that some horses excel so well just staying in one arena. But when you're rodeoing, you're going to a different arena every single time you're making a run. And not only are they different looking and different shaped, but they're also different sized patterns. And so for a lot of horses, this can be very difficult, because they have to adjust to the size of the pattern, the size of the alley, what the alley setup is like. So they have to have such a solid pattern so that you can always trust them to make their run no matter what. And also why this is more important when you're rodeoing rather than just jackpotting is that at a jackpot, usually you have an opportunity to go into the arena and actually do a time only. Now, the barrels might not be set exactly where they're going to be, but you can definitely get an idea, and you can definitely help your horse in where he's going to have to go during the run. Now, when you're at a rodeo, you do not get this opportunity. I would say almost 0% of the time do you even get to go into the arena. Maybe you can. There are some rodeos that allow you to warm up the day before in the arena, but that's going to be, you know, rare and very minimal. So your horse has to be able to adjust to these different arenas, so they have to have such a solid patterning. Along with this, your horse needs a lot of seasoning. And that kind of goes back to the patterning, because when you are seasoning, you're taking them to different arenas and running them, and it's basically exactly what it sounds like. You're seasoning. So you're doing a season where it's all new and it's all fresh. So your horse has to be very seasoned. Now, another reason why they do is because the ground in different arenas can change drastically. You might go one weekend fluffy, deep ground, and then the next weekend it might be shallow and hard. Like, you never know. And then you also factor in weather, because not a lot of these rodeos are indoors. So the weather plays a huge part, because if your horse has never ran in mud before, well, they might not do well at it. They might not even want to run. So seasoning and going through the weather and going through the different setups and everything helps so much in making a rodeo horse, because then they're ready for any situation no matter what. And obviously there's going to be curveballs. I mean, I think even the toughest rodeo horses do have difficulties in certain situations, and that's just life. And maybe if the conditions are that bad, you want to pull out from the rodeo, and you should really trust yourself to make that decision. You're going to have to be educated on what your horse can handle and what they cannot handle. So seasoning. Now, a little bit similarly to that, I put adaptability. So this just means that they can adapt to whatever situation is thrown at them. In my experience rodeoing, I have been warming up on a racetrack, in a field, you know, like, you never know. That's one thing. The warm-up situation can be crazy. Like, you might barely even get a warm-up. One rodeo I went at, there was just like a park. It was literally like grass, and we just had to warm up around the trees. So your horse has to be able to adapt to those warm-up situations and all these other situations in order to be able to be comfortable and still get a good warm-up. Another thing they have to adapt to is, if you are out on the road for a long period of time, you may have to end up buying hay from a location that you're at. If you, for one thing, run out of hay, or God forbid, you know, one of your bales goes moldy and you don't have enough, you don't have as much as you thought you did, you have to be able to, or your horse, it's a benefit if your horse is able to switch hays and adapt to that, or switch grains and adapt to that. Now, ideally, you wouldn't have to, because you could just bring your own hay, which is the ideal situation, but things happen, and that's when you're so far away from home. Those are things you have to count in and factor in. So that's another thing. And then they have to adapt to different stalling situations. Are they going to be in a little pen by your trailer, and are they going to be okay with all the rigs around them, and are they going to be okay with other horses? Are they going to be okay with being locked in a stall while you're at the rodeo? And, you know, these are also things, because if your horse gets extremely anxious, that can cause major issues, ulcers. I mean, it can just cause your horse to lose its mind. I mean, you want to make sure that your horse is able to put up with these different situations. And then also, with the adaptability, your horse, like at a rodeo, you may draw up slack, which could be 7 o'clock in the morning or really late at night. And your horse is going to have to be able to adapt to making a run at those different times of the day. It might not seem like a huge thing to you, but to a horse who has this normal, regular, everyday schedule, they get fed at a certain time, ridden at a certain time, fed dinner at a certain time, it can make a difference. And so making sure that your horse is ready to saddle up and make a run at any time of the day, I mean, it's a fact you have to consider in as well, because it's not just the easiest thing. Now, One thing that is super important for all horses, but especially rodeo athletes at the top level, is a good nutritional diet. Now, this can be different from horse to horse, so if you are not sure, I would definitely consult with an equine nutritionist, and they're all over. I'm sure you can find one in your town, which are people that will take into account all your horse's specific qualities, and then they will give you a diet or ideas, suggestions as to what your horse is going to need. It also depends on your location, because I know hay in certain locations is low in some things and high in others, so you might have to supplement with other things. So another thing that I put on my list is good conformation. Now, I'm not saying your horse has to have perfect conformation, because personally I don't even think that exists. I think every horse has at least one small thing wrong with them. But your horse doesn't have to have perfect conformation. But what it does need is to be strong, good bones. It's easier to work with a horse with more ideal conformation because they don't wear down as easily. If your horse does have a very significant conformational flaw, then chances are they're not going to stay sound doing these tough rodeos and leading this tough life. So if your horse, for example, has weak hocks or something like that, and they do need a little bit of help there, you need to be able to recognize that and give them the required maintenance. So injections are an option, or talk to your vet and talk about what you can do to help maybe a conformational flaw that your horse does have. So even if they don't have perfect conformation, there's things you can definitely look past. Along with that, which is similar, I put on my list that they should have good feet. Now, this is important again because sometimes they're going to be walking across unideal ground, or maybe warming up on unideal ground, and to have good, strong hooves is really important. Now, another point that I'm going to make is that you need to have a good farrier. Whether you're doing barefoot trims, or you're shod all around, or your horse needs this very special shoeing regimen, it doesn't matter. You need to have a good farrier. It doesn't matter even if you're just getting trims on your horse. They need to be a good farrier that can identify exactly what needs to be done with your specific horse, because every horse's feet are different. So a good farrier is so important. One thing that I would definitely not forget to say is that your horse should be tough and gritty, because it takes a lot of energy, and it takes a very special horse to be able to rodeo. Like, it's hard, it's not easy. And you really find out how tough and gritty your horse is when you take it out far away and you're traveling and you're running. Like, your horse needs to crave that. And if they don't, then maybe that's not the thing for them. It's just very helpful if your horse is tough and can put up with all these things. One very important point that I'm going to make is that your horse travels well. This doesn't just mean they can load in the trailer, but this means, will it drink water on the road? For example, if you're going on, say, like a 15-hour drive to a rodeo, which isn't unrealistic, I've done it actually many times, and you want to stop, obviously, many times along the way to give your horse water. Will it drink in the trailer? Will it drink at a weird place? Will it drink from a weird bucket? Water is so important for horses, so you want to make sure that your horse will be comfortable drinking in whatever situation, in whatever place. They also need to be able to settle into new places easily, because you might only be staying there for one night and making your run the next day, or making your run that same day. And so your horse should be able to settle into a new environment easily. Drop a hay net in front of them, they'll just eat and pretend they're at home. It's very important, and it isn't a very easy thing to find in a horse if they haven't been taken places a lot regularly. And then, yes, it does have to do well on the trailer. If your horse is one that gets extremely anxious when it's on the trailer, maybe rodeoing in faraway places is not ideal for them, and you have to take that into consideration. Now, the last thing I put on here is just that your horse needs to be comfortable. Now, what I mean by this is you need to make sure your saddle fits your horse. This is so important. Make sure you're using the right tack. What bit you're using, make sure your horse is comfortable in that. Make sure your horse has been checked for ulcers, and you're preventing them or doing, different things that can help to prevent them, because being out on the road, it makes a horse very prone to ulcers. Also, make sure they don't have any respiratory issues. So many horses are bleeders. You want to make sure that if your horse is bleeding, that you're doing something to prevent that, help that. It's actually worth it to get your horse looked at by a vet for respiratory issues, because so many performance horses have them. And then you should be getting your horse done by a chiropractor if they're doing hard things like this. Chiropractic work once a month is what I do on my horse in an active season. And then also massages go along with that. Obviously talk to a chiropractor or a massage therapist on what they think your horse needs, because every horse is also different. Some can go a little longer, some have to get done more regularly. And then also make sure your horse is in great physical health for it. So get a vet check done at the beginning of each year at least, which is super helpful. Now, I think I covered a lot of different things. I don't want to be rambling on too much, but this is something I'm super passionate about as I train and season my horses myself, and rodeoing is what I love to do and what I hope to do as a profession one day. But I just want to also exaggerate the fact that there's so much that goes on at a rodeo. Your horse needs to be very brave, because there's going to be banners and umbrellas if people are carrying them, like people all over the place, and flags. And I think another thing I actually put was versatility. And what I mean by this is that sometimes, for an example, sometimes you're asked to ride in the grand entry. Now, is your horse able to go into the arena and do a nice slow lope with a flag? Like, is your horse able to be thrown into different situations like that and do well? Is your horse going to freak out about the loudspeaker? They have to be very desensitized to all these things, and they have to be a very brave horse. So it takes such a special horse to be a rodeo horse, and it takes years actually before your horse will be amazing at it and completely seasoned. So it's a lot of work, especially when you don't know at the beginning if your horse is going to excel at rodeo. But there is truly nothing like it. I can't even explain to you like the feelings you get at a rodeo. I can just imagine. I haven't been to a rodeo for a while, sadly, because of COVID. But the national anthem, the grand entry, watching the other events, rooting on your friends if you have any, and also when you're on a circuit, you make a lot of friends. So there truly is nothing like it. It's such a family sport, and that's what I love. But being with your horse at a rodeo and getting to make a run, and the adrenaline and the loud crowds and the announcer, there is nothing like it. And for a lot of horses, they love it as well. And so I'm so thankful that my horse, thankfully, does like it. But not every horse will. So keep that in mind if you are planning on rodeoing opposed to just jackpotting, which is still a great way to barrel race. I will never bash anyone who chooses to just do jackpots, because that's amazing. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please like if you liked this video, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. I will see you guys next time. Bye.